Hi, I'm Robert Joseph, and today I'm going to teach you how to make this sleep tank, which is pattern number 86. I call it a sleep tank because it's basically, I designed it so it was kind of unfinished. A couple of things to know about this pattern, other than that is really easy to make, is that there are no allowances for the neckline, the armhole, or the hem, meaning there are no turn allowances. So usually on your tank tops you'll either turn them in or you will bind it. I don't give any seam allowances for that because I wanted this to be a very simple garment that you might sleep in, a very lightweight garment. Of course you could wear it out if you would like. But the finishing technique that I use on the neckline and the armhole and the hem here is just to overlock them or serge them all the way around. Now, of course, if you want to turn it, you can. You can turn it under about 1/4 inch. Just understand that you will lose the width here at the shoulder, and you'll actually make the armhole a little bit larger as well as the neckline a little bit larger because you're taking that amount away. If you choose to turn this up, the hem up, even though I don't give a hem allowance, you will lose some of the length. So if you choose to do that, I would suggest just adding the length that you want to turn up around the bottom edge, and do the same thing here at the neckline and the armhole. So this is the simplest tank to put together. I will let you know that the armholes are a little bit larger than my other tank top pattern. The neckline is a little bit lower and it has a little bit more scooped shape to it. The one thing that I do in the videos is for all of the seams, because they are unfinished, is that I tack each one of them. So even though like the shoulder seam is very short here, I go back with a straight stitch and I tack each end of it, and that's just so the seam here won't pull out, that it's very secure. Okay, so now this pattern, the sleep tank is paired with the sleep short, and I have a separate video for this. So in the beginning of the sleep short video, I don't have the tank because I wasn't using my dress form for the short. I was using my other mannequin that everybody seems to like. So these two are paired together. So when you purchase the sleep tank, you will automatically get the short, and vice versa. They're actually just sold as a package, so you will get pattern 86 and 81 together. Just be aware that there are no finished edges or hem allowances on any of these. Now, in the video, I will tell you that I make a big deal about sewing this together. It doesn't really need to take that long, but I just wanted to be very, very thorough, just in case there were new sewers out there or sewers that had not used a serge or overlock or some knit fabrics. So I just wanted to be very thorough. So for those more experienced sewers, I suggest just scanning through the video if you don't want to wait. But just very quickly, all you need to do is sew the shoulder seams together and sew the side seams together, and you're pretty much done. Just make sure that you're matching face sides together. A note about sewing it together, I do the shoulders separately and then I do the side seams. However, you can clip the side seams, you can pin the shoulder seams together and the side seams together all in one go, and then sew them all at the machine. And then you're basically done, aside from, you know, overlocking the edges or just doing a zigzag around. And that's pretty much all the notes. Let's get into cutting this out and sewing it up. Okay, so before I start cutting, I should just let you know I'm holding the camera right now, so it's a little bit shaky. But I wanted to show you this because I don't think that I'm going to be able to get all of the cutting into the camera from above. So I just wanted to explain. So the way I have the fabric laid out now is you'll see this in a lot of documentation for knits, because knits are woven at 58 inches to 60 inches wide, and with that you can actually get the front and back cut out in about a yard depending on your length of the garment, like a t-shirt. In this case it's a tank top. So the instructions will say that you can fold the fabric, the selvages, which is here, to the center of the fabric, and I've done this here, folded to the center, and then you can place the front and the back on each of the folds, and that's how you can cut it out. And then whatever is left over here you have as an excess. So I won't be able to get that method in the camera because I can't get my camera high enough to actually be able to reach the record button. So that's why I'm doing this. But actually I prefer to fold as I go. So I will probably cut this one, and this is the back, and then I will actually fold it over again, and I will place the front on the fabric and cut that out. It just seems to save a lot more fabric left over for me to make other things with. So the other thing that you should know is that I have my two patterns. Let me back up a little bit. They're going two different ways. Like the neck is up here on the back, and then the neck is up here on the front. So now this one has different variations of lines going through it, so different colors. If you have a directional print, meaning the print is only going one way, you can't do this. One of your pieces will be upside down. So you just need to take care in the direction of your pattern layout, so that if I had a directional print and everything was going up this way, I would actually need to take this piece and flip it over like that and cut it out like that. So the necks and the hems were all on the same side. So I don't really have to worry about that, because actually I'm not going to worry about it, because it's hard to tell what is up and down for these different lines. And this is a very lightweight fabric, so I'm not really going to be worrying about if I'm getting all the lines correctly lined up, because it's going to be super hard to do that. And if I were, I would actually fold everything out and cut one giant piece. I'd make the back and the front one whole piece and line everything up that way. But I'm not going to go into how to do that right now. So I'm going to just relay this out, and I'm going to get everything cut out, and then I will come back and talk to you about getting this all sewn up. Okay, so now that I have the front and the back cut out, I can take away the patterns. And again, just before I do that, I just want to remind you again that this is the simplest, easiest tank top you'll ever make, because I don't have there's no seam allowance along the necklines or at the hems. There's no hem allowance. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to overlock these edges. Now you could straight stitch them, you could leave them empty. You don't have to put a stitch on there because it's knit. Knit doesn't necessarily unravel unless you have a different type of knit that runs. But this is a jersey. It wouldn't really do that in the wash. When you wash it, it would just curl over. but I'm going to show you what you need to do to the seam, the shoulder seams, so that it doesn't fall out or rip out. So I'm going to go over all of that. So just remember that there's no seam allowance around the armholes or the neck openings or the hem. Okay, so I'm going to move the pattern out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out, I'm going to match face sides together. When I say face sides, I mean right sides. I generally try not to say right side because we have a left and a right side, and I don't want any confusion. So what I'm laying out here, and I'm being very careful not to stretch it, is I've got the back, and these are the shoulder seams. So this is the face side, and I'm going to take the front, and I'm going to match the face side of the front to the face side of the back. And I'm actually going to match up these shoulders first. So I'm going to match these shoulders, and I'm going to match first the outer edges here. And instead of pinning, how loud this is going to be, I'm going to use some clips. It will be easier a little bit because it's such a small area. So I'm going to line up the edge here, and the front will extend with a little bit of a point, and that's fine because where, let me get this lined up a little, where the necklines match, this little point here, I know it's hard for you to see, do I have a pin that I can maybe use to point? I don't know where my awls are. Well, the awl is right here. So at this point right here, that is actually your seam allowance, right? That's where your stitch line should be. If it's a little off, it's not that big of a deal. If you overcut, that's fine. I'm just going to use clips, and I'm going to clip at the beginning and the end, or on either side if you prefer. So again, I'm going to line this one up the same way. I'm first going to match the outer edge, and just kind of be careful that you're not stretching. This is a super lightweight knit. It's just what I had available. When I purchase fabrics, I kind of buy the least expensive I can, and sometimes when you buy online, you're actually really not sure what you're actually getting. Sometimes it's a complete surprise. I kind of knew this one was going to be lightweight, but I didn't think it was going to be so see-through. Okay, so there I've got that one matched and this one matched. Now, to save time, and you may also do this as well, I'm going to pull this up a little bit, be very gentle. If you have a more stable knit, you don't have to be as gentle. You don't have to worry about as much of stretching potential. But just be careful. So this is the back, and this is the side seam, and I'm going to match the front. Now I did not match the front to the back up here. This is the underarm, and then match down to the bottom. Don't worry, I'm not worrying at all about matching the stripes. The stripes are so narrow, it would almost be impossible. These all lined up. Put a clip here, and then I'm going to put one here in the middle as well. The great thing about the clips is that when you are at the machine and you are sewing, you don't have to worry about what side your pins are on. Sometimes I always like to go from the bottom up, so if I forget which side to put my pins on to take them out easy, it doesn't matter because these are either side. It doesn't matter. That's what's nice about the clips. And it doesn't take as long to put them in. So I'm going to clip this one here. And these are the only seams we actually have in this tank top, because we're not putting a binding on. I'm not doing anything else with the arms, but there will be some additional stitching to secure the top and the bottom of these seams, which I will explain once we get there. Okay, so there are all my clips. So as I said before, I'm going to start with the shoulder seams, and the way, even though I matched the edge up here, I'm actually going to start at the inside of the neck on either side and sew out. And then for the seam lines, for the side seams, I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to sew up to the underarm. And then I will show you how we secure those after. So I will see you over at the overlock. Okay, so basically we have a tank top. All our seams are sewn, and I just want to show you. Let me pull this to the front, make sure I get everything in here. Now, what I like to do, instead of just cutting these extra threads off, the extra overlock threads, what I want to do is I want to reinforce all of these edges because these can just end up pulling out if they're not reinforced. So what I like to do is just kind of do some regular straight stitches here just to tack these ends closed. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, you know that I've talked about home machines and how they aren't really built or really like to work on little tiny areas, especially with knits starting at the very beginning, mostly because the seam allowances are so small and the feed dogs are set up wide, apart from each other rather wide. So what I like to do is I take either a piece of paper or I have this is rip away, lightweight rip away that I use for embroidery, which I don't do very often, machine embroidery. And I'm just going to cut some strips of it. Well, I didn't need to do that. Some little strips of it. And what I'll do is once I get this in the machine, and you'll see me do this at the beginning, so I will put this underneath and I'll extend it a little bit. I'll put this at the beginning of the machine, and I'll put the needle right here, right up here at the beginning, and then I'll do a few stitches and back stitch. And that will help keep this closed. Now it seems like a little bit of extra work. Why didn't we just do that at the beginning, or why didn't we sew this with the regular machine and just do that? Well, because this is so narrow, again, the home machine's feed dogs are set apart rather wide, so they don't like to grab this. So, so that's why I go back and do all of these. Now you could also fold the extra tail back or underneath and catch that in that stitching if you want. I'm going to forego that this time because I'm going to put a row of overlocking around the armhole and the neck hole, which will kind of grab that and help it from unraveling. So, but I'm going to trim that off after I do this stitching. So that's how I'm going to reinforce the underarms, the side seam at the hem, and either side of the shoulder seam. Okay, so now that we have those reinforced, I'm just gonna run around and like clip these threads really quick, and then let's go ahead and take the paper off here, and I'll show you. Don't just rip the paper off. So this one has been clipped, so don't just like pull this or yank it because you may pull that seam out. So what you want to do, just gently rip if you're using this, or if you're using paper, just gently rip and like pull along that seam line on one side, and then the other side should come out very easy. So that's what I'm going to do, and clip and remove all these really quick. Okay, so I have everything clipped and reinforced. So now all I need to do is overlock the edges of the neck and the armhole and the hem, and that's all I'm going to do. Now this is already face side is on the inside, so let me turn this around. I know it's hard to see everything in the camera because I can't in the camera because or on your screen because I can't get my camera high enough and still be able to reach the record. Now around this neckline, this is a really lightweight fabric that I'm using. I'm not going to worry too much about stretching because this was really just for this tutorial. Now if you're worried about the neckline stretching out as you sew, if you don't have a serger, you're doing it with a zigzag, you can do a couple of things. You could actually sew with the same fabric, you could actually sew it right on top of it. You could bind this if you know how to do binding. You could use the double fold or fold over elastic along this neckline, but you want to be sure that you're stretching that as you sew it. And I've done a little tutorial on that before. You could just leave it as it is and then wash it, and usually what will happen is this edge will just curl. Hopefully it won't fray. It shouldn't fray because it's a knit. I'm going to pull something out a little more advanced. For those of you who are more advanced, is I don't want this to all come out, but it has partly. So this is, if you can barely kind of see it in the camera, this is clear elastic. In the industry, I've called it elastane and not elastic. It doesn't have a lot of stretch to it, and the recovery is really not that great once you got it on here, but it's basically used along armholes and necklines for stabilizing purposes. You can also use it in the actual shoulder seam lines if you're doing t-shirts, or if you want to put it in this shoulder line, but this shoulder is so narrow you don't really need that reinforcement. So what you would do is you would put this on the bottom or the inside, so it would actually be on the other side if you were sewing it underneath, and you would cut it off. Now this is a 1/4 inch. I would use a 3/8 inch and then cut off about 1/8 of an inch so it would extend beyond the edge of your neckline. So one of the things that you might, instead of just doing an overlock, you might switch your overlock or serger over to the rolled hem and do a kind of a longer stitch rolled hem and put this underneath, and that could be decorative as well. I've done that in the industry for tank tops for large companies as well, so that works. So this clear elastic isn't that expensive. You should be able to find it online if that's what you want to do, but this is a more advanced process. But for today, for this purpose, to get this tank top done, I'm just going to overlock it. Now previously, like if you saw the sleep short pattern, which is actually sold with this pattern, for the leg openings I did a 3-thread overlock stitch with that, and that was fine. Now I have my 4-thread double needle set up because I just did these seams. I'm going to leave it there, but I am going to loosen the tension on the needles just a little bit, maybe half a number, just to help it from looking like it's getting puckered or tight tension on it. So that's all I'm going to do, and I think I have it set at, well, they're set at 4s right now, so that means I'm going to probably set them about 3.5, just for the needles, and everything else is going to stay the same unless I see it pulling, and in that case I'm probably going to loosen the looper thread which is the number 3 position. Probably loosen that up a little bit as well. So I'm going to start probably with the hem, because if I see that there's a problem with the tension, then it won't be as noticeable. Although I'm probably not going to be wearing this out anywhere. I don't usually wear tank tops in public, but anyway, that's just me. So this is just a sleep in. So I'm just going to overlock the edges and we'll be done. Okay, so there is the sleep tank. It is all done. Now, if you are worried about any kind of rippling, if you see this kind of rippling effect, what you can do is just take a press cloth, put a press cloth over this, like a piece of nice cotton, and just press a little on low heat just to press it out. Okay, and so that's a pretty easy basic tank top where you're just overlocking the edges. Now if you have a solid color or even print, you could use a variegated thread, and that would make a really nice detail around the neckline and the armholes and the hem. So let me turn this around this way so you can see what the neckline looks like this way. I can't get everything in the shot. Again, I just can't get my cameras high enough to see everything. So this is the neckline and the armhole. And then, of course, the hem, which is a little bit lower in the back. Here's the back. Right. And there you have it. Your sleep tank, which is paired with the sleep short. And there we have it. So we have the finished tank top, and like I mentioned before, I overlocked all of the edges, and I took a lot more time than I needed to, as you probably very well see if you stayed with me through the entire video. So I'm going to take the arm off here just to recap on the side seam, and I'll turn this to face you a little bit on the side seams. Just remember that I went back and I tacked each one of the seams, and that was so that it wouldn't pull out. And you just kind of want to do that. Now again, I've used a very lightweight knit. So for the beginners out there, I would use something that has a little bit more weight to it and thickness to it, because using a very lightweight knit can be very challenging for those new sewers. Again, this tank top is paired with the sleep short. You'll get both of the patterns when you purchase this. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Thank you for watching, and as always, be well.